Welcome. My name is Ben Cool. I'm a sports analyst and the host of BC-60. Today I'm interviewing Will Conerly, the gnarly play-by-play announcer. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm excited for the conversation ahead. I appreciate you taking the time and busy schedule to join me.
Happy to help out and happy to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a few questions for you. What is the process of being a sports update anchor?
Yeah, so being a sports update anchor is an ongoing process in the terms of you're always reporting on new information as a job at your job. So the process to become one, I think, is just on air reps. And then I think the process of being one is being very in tune with whatever market you're in. I do it on radio, and radio primarily is local. So I think that the key for that aspect of it is that you prioritize the big major local sports stories. You gather information from trusted sources and you put together scripts based on the station formatics. For example, if you do a minute long update and you have 3 to 5 stories, how do you prioritize those? What do you want to talk about? And you want it to be local, good stories that, again, if you're doing a couple an hour, always new information coming in by the hour. So being up to date and paying attention to news and then writing those scripts all in a short period of time, that's kind of the process while I'm on the job.
That's awesome. What are the key differences you've noticed between calling games on the radio, TV, and digital platforms like ESPN?
The difference between radio and TV, and I've seen a lot of the interviews you've done. I think that and a lot of people have that versatile experience, and the aspect of having versatile experience is really good. But I think that radio, TV, and digital, it's an interesting conversation because for play-by-play broadcasters, the conversation used to be radio versus TV. And so, how do you call a game on radio versus TV? And the best way I can put it is on radio, you're painting pictures with words, but on television, you're captioning those pictures with your words. So you talk less. And I think on digital, sometimes those lines get blurred now on lower level productions, or sometimes now even higher level productions. There's simulcasts where you're doing radio and TV at the same time on a digital platform. And so I think digital, most of the time, if there's video and you want to be a TV play-by-play broadcaster, you call it like it's a TV broadcast, which means captioning the pictures, talking less, and laying out more on television.
Gnarly. How did you adapt your play-by-play approach across different sports like basketball, baseball, soccer, and softball?
Yeah, so the adapting the play-by-play approach definitely across different sports, it requires so every sport has different demands. For the specific ones you mentioned, I'll give you a couple of examples. I mean, for baseball, you just have to understand at the end of the day what the objective of each sport is. And for baseball, it's scoring runs and limiting them. So your entire conversation of the game is describing how one team is trying to obtain an objective and how the other team is trying to deny them. Same thing works in soccer. You're trying to score a goal. And so the whole story goes around that. I do think from the nitty gritty perspective of each sport, you have to understand the rules of each sport. And obviously, all the rules are different. So that requires a lot of learning from your process to understand the players because there's different rules, different sports, of course. So they're completely different. So understanding those nuances is huge. And then also within that, from a broad stroke, knowing that some sports are higher paced, basketball, hockey, volleyball. Some sports have a slower pace. Baseball, albeit a little quicker now with the pitch clock. So the paces also determine how you're going to broadcast as well, because you're doing the play by play. And so each play, you document what's going on, but there's different paces of play depending on the sport and, of course, the rules as well.
Rock on. What was one of the most challenging broadcasts you led, and how did you handle it?
Huh. That's an interesting question. Most challenging broadcast I've done. Um, huh. I would say probably the first time I called lacrosse, because growing up, I watched a ton of football, a ton of basketball, a ton of baseball. I knew soccer very well, playing it, and then also just being around it my whole life. Lacrosse wasn't a sport I was really exposed to much. I maybe have watched a couple of the games, and then there was an opportunity to call lacrosse. And I always thought never say no to an opportunity, no matter the sport, especially when I'm young, trying to break into the business, which I'm still on that track right now of any sport, anytime has been my motto. So lacrosse was a challenge. How I combated those challenges was before I called my first lacrosse game, I probably watched 6 or 7 lacrosse national television broadcasts, took notes, watched games again with the coach of the team, and just was honest and said, hey, I'm a broadcaster. I want to do a great job. I don't know the sport that well. I've learned it. I've read books. I've studied the rules. Can you even teach me more? And I watched games with the coaches, and he started to tell me nuances. And that's how I learned. But of course, there's a learning curve again with every sport. And it kind of goes back to your question about how do you adapt and well, you try to learn. But that for me was a challenge, trying to fit all the learning of the sport in a tight window on top of just preparing for the game. You're preparing for the sport as well, which you don't have to prepare for the sport in sports that you know it particularly well, like baseball, playing my whole life, playing in college. I know the sport. Now, can I still learn about the game? Yes, you can always learn about any sport, but I definitely figured there was a challenge calling lacrosse for the first time, and it just came from studying. Just like anything you want to learn, you have to take time and spend time on it. And sometimes that can be challenging, but I also saw it as an exciting opportunity. So there's been a lot of challenges, I think. Broadcasting the live game, though, that typically isn't one of them, because that's one of the most fun things to do, and that's exciting. The challenges, I think, just come from being patient, waiting on getting opportunities, and those sorts of things, and some of the unknown of when you know you're going to call your next game as a freelancer. But that could be a song for another time. I guess the challenge for the in-game broadcast will be when I did a sport for the first time, in that case, lacrosse.
That's cool. If you had a voice, had a superpower, what would it be, and how would you use it during a broadcast?
If I had a voice superpower,
Yeah, if your voice had a superpower, what would it be, and how would you use it during a broadcast?
hmm, that's a good question, because I think as a broadcaster, we recognize that our voice is our instrument, and we want to use that instrument to the best of our ability. I think that the superpower I would want would be something of longevity. In terms of, I love broadcasting so much, and taking care of your pipes is something that is super important with your breath work and how you're supporting your vocal cords. And I've taken the time to try to understand how to do that at the highest level. But I guess the superpower I would want was that ultimate endurance to continue to nourish my vocal cords, to be able to have them express the game in the way it's meant to be expressed. And I don't know if that's that's an interesting. I've never been asked that before, but I think it would be something of the fact of longevity, where it's like a pitcher, his arm never gets hurt. That would be my thing. Is like, because there are some days that your voice doesn't feel as good as other days, and so my superpower would be that it always feels as good as it's supposed to feel, and that would be a fun superpower to have.
Mine would be the ability to memorization, to
Oh yeah.
memorize stuff.
That's a really good one too. That is a great, great one. That'd save you a lot of time.
Yes, it will. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me for an interview. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with you. Hear your insights, your stories, and perspective are inspiring. I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Please come again soon.
You got it.
Rock on, rock on. That's the end of my show. See you soon, everyone.